Dawg fans, here we go back for another week of Talking Huskies. And how about a week one win over Boise State, 56-19 over the weekend. Great to have everybody here talking Huskies every week on Root Sports Northwest. Of course, big thanks to our friends at the law offices of Catherine Clark. My name is Dave Softy Mahler, joined again by former Husky, former NFL tight end, my man Cam Cleveland. And Cam, things took a little bit of time to get going for the Huskies. Fell behind 6-0 early in the first quarter on Saturday. But once that second quarter began, it was a whole different ball game, baby. How about the Dawgs' performance on Saturday against Boise State, my man?
Yeah, man, that first quarter, we were thinking about, all right, break the rust off a little bit. Guys are going to settle in the nerves. Look, it was a different opponent. And give a lot of credit to Boise State. They were tough, they were physical, and as advertised. But the key word here is we start to see when you settle in, I guess that's key words, my friend. When you settle in and Michael Penix gets going and this offense hits rhythm, suddenly those wide receivers, Coach Grubb, Coach DeBoer getting a rhythm, and explosion into the second quarter because that was a lot of offense, dude.
And Cam, look, it just goes to show you the expectations on this Husky offense. I think people almost expect the Dawgs to score on not just every drive, but almost every play. And it took a long time, let's face it, last year before we saw Michael Penix get touched, and he gets sacked on the third play of the season. Ryan Grubb and Roger Rosengarten talking yesterday on KJR both said they had multiple receivers running the wrong route on that play, and there was nowhere for Mike Penix to go. So there was a little bit of anxiety, I think, early on in the game because the expectations, let's face it, man, are so dang high for this offense.
Well, it's high, and it has to be. We've talked about it the whole offseason, so we know that. And no one's going to have higher expectations than them. And as it should be. The coaches, to win a Pac-12 championship, to maybe go to the college football playoff, that's what it's supposed to be. But you have 5 wide receivers out there that sometimes, not all, will be perfect. And that's okay. I mean, some of those guys are going to play on Sunday. In fact, a lot of those guys are going to play on Sunday. You have 2 tackles that are going to play on Sunday. You have a quarterback that acts like he's ready to play on Sunday right now. But they are human. They have to get comfortable. And that was a tough opponent to start. Again, a lot of credit to Boise State, but those guys settled in very, very comfortably. And then when that fear of an offense like what Michael Penix is running and you're looking at it, you're going, they can score from the 20. They can score from move the field, those gaps between the 20s. But as we get into the red zone and this season gets going, we could talk more about the running game and the things this offense has to improve on. But when you score that many points, and here we are going, should there have been more out there? Potentially, but that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, we saw Mike Penix overthrow receivers, underthrow receivers in the very first couple of drives in this game. And then once again, that third drive started. They made the move there from Nate Kalepo to Julius Bilo at left guard. It sounds like that was a plan change anyway, Cam. I think it's easy for people like us to sit there and say, oh, look how much better the offensive line was with Julius Bilo versus Nate Kalepo. Hey, look, Nate Kalepo has played before. He started last year when Jackson Kirkland was banged up at the beginning of the season, and that sounded to me like it was a plan change for the offensive line. But you're also working in a redshirt freshman guard that weighs 275 pounds in Parker Brailsford. We talked about him last week, right? We talked about that decision to go with him at right guard, and I don't remember hearing Parker's name called a lot during the game on Saturday, which is a good thing for an offensive lineman.
Yeah, it's actually a really good thing, and you mentioned that interior locked up, very good job by both those guys. Mateo Mele at center, and then you mentioned the 2, Nate and Julius. But Parker Brailsford, according to Pro Football Focus, he was the highest graded offensive lineman for that group at just over, I think it was 81% and success. So that's something when you see a young man like that getting his first start and getting those grades. Now, again, take that with a grain of salt. It comes from an outside source, but still, you have guys that are looking at it. And that was the concern of the whole entire group of that offensive line. You have 2 bookends that are going to be solid guys all year round. But that interior group was something that needed to get started quickly. And if they find a good rotation, the competitiveness, and we know Coach Huff likes to rotate too into the third quarter, and they're going to get a lot of guys reps. Gary and Hatchett's going to rotate through also. It was a good group. And yes, on that sack, I think that coaches are going to look at it as like, some missed assignments down the field and that made a difference. But that's okay.
Yeah, you mentioned Pro Football Focus and their grade of Parker Brailsford. The Softy grading system, which, let's be honest, on this show is really all that matters, man, said that he played great, all right? So if the Softy system says he played great, then the kid played great. Michael Penix, 29 of 40, man. Dude, 450 yards, 5 touchdowns. We're watching the game on Saturday thinking, man, Jake Browning has the school record of 6. Did it twice in the 2016 season, once against Cal and once against Oregon, the famous finger point game down there at Autzen Stadium, by the way. I'm sure the Talkin Ducks guys would love to hear more about that game later on. But tell me about Michael Penix and the game he had overall. Started things off on the third drive on that slant to McMillan, kind of getting the offense clicking a little bit. But does Michael Penix even look to you like a better product than the guy that ended last season with the win over Texas in the Alamo Bowl?
Yeah, Dave, if he starts this quickly like he did, and this is about comfort. This is another year under the belt. This is when we were talking about last season going, can Michael Penix finish an entire year and make it through? And he did. And now we get to see since post bowl game, Texas, this Husky team has the longest winning streak with Michael Penix other than Georgia, because they have 8 in a row. So that's a pretty good thing. And knowing that Michael Penix is leading that group into the next week versus Tulsa too. But yes, man, he looked really good. Some of the throws, I tell you, are NFL-ready throws. The throws to Jalen Polk, that drop over the top to J-Mac, the post-skinny stop that he anticipated with Rome Odunze. Those are throws that NFL guys make. And he's a lefty that spins it from one hash to the next that I'm looking at him going, how does he make that throw falling on his back foot? Because he has elite arm strength. All those things. And then these wide receivers. There are so many open players. And yeah, there's a lot of pundits out there across the nation that have said this is the best wide receiver group in the country. Hard to argue against that. But it's also a top quarterback in the country.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, look, Ohio State may have something to say about that when it comes to wide receivers, but I think for now we like the guys that we have at UW. Let's come back and talk more about the offense, morph over to defense. Kalen DeBoer's got some thoughts on the job the defense did on Saturday. More on UW's 56-19 win over Boise State in Week 1 coming next on Talkin Huskies. All right, Dog fans, welcome back to Talkin Huskies. Dave Softy Mahler joined by Cam Cleland. Cam, big thanks to our friends at Nordstrom Heating and Air for being with us every week on the show. Could not do it without the support of our sponsors, and great to have everybody here on board, including our pals over at Nordstrom Heating and Air. Check them out on the web, by the way, at nordstromheating.com. All right, so before we talk some defense, the Dogs give up 6 early in the first quarter and then hold Boise State and Talon Green and George Halani to 13 points the rest of the way. I thought a great job by the D, but we'll shelve the defensive talk for a second. I want to go back, Cam, to the first segment, talking about the offense, and let's focus now on the running game. Did you see enough from the run game? Did Ryan Grubb see enough from the run game on Saturday with Dylan Johnson and Will Nixon? Here's the offensive coordinator's thoughts on what we saw from the running back room in week number 1.
Yeah, we're still trying to find our own there, and definitely still kind of feeling the loss of CD, if I'm being really transparent. And that room is working really hard and realizing that practice reps count right now, and that we're still trying to find out who the leader is in that room and who's supposed to be the guy. So I thought Will took a big step forward, and Sam Adams got a few reps, probably see him a little bit more, but still working through that. So we got to have a great week of practice, and we got 3 days to figure that out, see who we want to get the ball to a little bit more.
All right, so clearly some work to be done there, no question about it, with the running back room. We saw 4 guys play, including ASU transfer Daniel Nagata, Sam Adams getting some run on Saturday. But, Cam, your thoughts as you walked away from Husky Stadium on what you saw from the ground game on Saturday?
It is telling that Coach Grubb is mentioning he's looking for that leader to step up in the room, and we knew that Cam Davis was going to be a big loss, and it's still reeling a little bit when you can see it, but there needs to be somebody that steps up, and if it does have to be 4, if it is Dylan Johnson, Will Nixon, Sam Adams, and potentially Daniel Ngata, those guys are going to have to pick up the slack. I do think that this team has to find a semblance of something they really love on that run game, because as teams start to take advantage, and maybe they do bring more pressure, or maybe they do like to lock up down the field, you expect Michael Penix to carry a team, but there is going to be situations you need to get a 3rd down and 3. We saw a couple of those situations, some toss sweeps. Heck, we saw Jalen McMillan rush for a touchdown. That's not the guy I want to see rushing for touchdowns all the time, although that was a fun play. I would like to see Dylan Johnson get that explosive move, be powerful, but you can tell that Will Nixon is stronger this year, looks a little more explosive, and he's quick in the hole and he can make those adjustments. Yeah, I think right now the running game has a lot of upside to get to, but the more and the quicker these guys feel comfortable and running the football, the better for this offense.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, watching that game on Saturday, they were missing Cam Davis for sure. And let's hope that there's not many times throughout the season where we have that same thought that this would have been different. It may have felt different with Cam Davis out there. And I don't know, Will Nixon had the 21-yard run, Cam, on Saturday. If you take that off the table, he still averages 5.5 yards a carry on the other 5 carries he had on Saturday versus Boise State. He, to me, kind of looks like a guy that's better off in space. Get him on some screen plays, some shuttle passes, get him on the move with a couple yards to run of open field. And number 8 seems to be able to take off and make something happen. So I just feel like after week 1, they're still very much looking for that bell cow at running back. And then Richard Newton, right? Richard Newton, at best, is number 5 on the depth chart. Could not even get on the field, Cam, if not for special teams on Saturday. I talked to Ryan Grubb about that on the show this week, and he said, look, unless we're 1,000% convinced that you can protect Mike, we're not going to play you. So clearly, either A, there's a problem with the approach by Newton to pass pro, or B, the shoulders, the injury is a problem, and he just simply can't get out there and perform.
Well, it's a competitive room, and the coaches are going to put the best guys out there, and let's be realistic. It is most and priority number 1, pass protection from the offensive line, and then backs that have to be able to pick up blitzes, linebackers, chip on the edges. Those backs have to be able to do that. If there is a concern with Rich's shoulders, and let's be real also too, there is a little bit of concern with those injuries. They have to have someone out there that can handle that. Bruisers, whatever you have to do, pass protection is a big deal in this offense for Mike Penix, and knowing that those backs can step up and do that. We're going to tell, and it's going to start to evolve too. Formations are a little bit telling on when they're going to run. Those adjustments, box count means 6 in the box, 5 in the box. Can you switch? Can you check to run? It'd be nice to see that occasionally. All those facets are going to start to evolve as we get into season in Pac-12 play.
And you mentioned McMillan on that touchdown run. Jalen McMillan played like a guy who was left off the AP first team preseason All-American list, man. We talked about that last week, about the motivating factor for McMillan. But, man, look at these numbers. Roma Dunze, 7 for $132 and a score. McMillan, 8 for 95 and a couple of scores through the air and 1 more on the ground. Jalen Polk, I'm going to start calling Jalen Big Play J. 3 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. This receiving core, and then how about number 4? Jeremy Bernard getting involved on special teams, the opening kickoff. It took Boise State 1 kickoff to say, you know what, that's enough. We're not kicking to that guy anymore. We'll come back and talk about the playmakers on Saturday and get to that defensive performance. Hear from the head coach on the D next on Talkin Huskies. All right, week 1 for Washington football is in the books. Next up, Tulsa on Saturday at 2 o'clock. We'll talk about Tulsa at some point today, getting a preview of the next opponent. Don't be looking past Tulsa now, Cam. Michigan State, a week from Saturday. You got to focus on Tulsa first, so we'll get to that in a second. But 56-19 win. UW wins by 37 points against a team that was picked to win the Mountain West on Saturday. They more than double up the spread. I know you're not a big handicapping Vegas guy, but for those that follow that stuff, Washington was a 14-point favorite, and they doubled that on Saturday, in part due to the job the defense did. They give up 6 points early on. Boise State misses the PAT, and then just 13 points, Cam, in the final 3 quarters of the game on Saturday. Here's head coach Kalen DeBoer on his thoughts on what his defense brought to the table on Saturday versus Boise.
Did a good job getting off the field. Really they hit us on a couple tailback slow screens, kind of weak side, and then probably the one over the middle, kind of deeper ball in the probably first quarter. Those are things. The screen game, right? We'll be working on that, tomorrow, getting some work on that. But as the game went along, we got some looks at it and slowed it down and stopped it later in the game. So I was really proud, of our way our defense played. I love seeing the takeaways. When those balls hit you in the hands, man, making that play, and the one by Cam Fab. It's really cool when you can sit on the headphones and hear the call and actually hear, Coach Morrell say this is a pick, and almost know exactly before the call's being made that that we got a call that he likes, and it being executed. We talk a lot about how that looks when Ryan Grubb makes a call on offense and the offense executes it, and you're thinking touchdown all the way. So it tells me that the guys are really understanding what we're trying to accomplish, are taking those next steps, and we still, again, we're not going to be happy. We gave up 19 points, and we want to even be even stingier than that.
All right, so I think if you play Boise State and you give up 19 points, you'll be thrilled. 13 points over 3 quarters, you'll be happy. All this talk about Talkin Green taking off on the ground, burning Washington on the ground, never materialized. George Halani was 1,000-yard back. Never got going on Saturday. Certainly there are some things to nitpick about the D, and we'll get to those, Cameron, in a second, but how about your take on the job the defense did on Saturday versus Boise State?
So I said last week, if you remember, 25 points was my number that this defense needed to be under, I think, throughout the season in that average. You throw up 19 versus Boise State, and Talkin Green, we saw the explosive runs that young man could do last year, and he's as advertised. I don't know. You probably saw it from the sideline. That is a big young man. He is crazy athletic. And this defense held him in check. Held him in check. Now, there were some big plays early, but once this defense found a way to manage that, Eddie Ulofoshio did a good job getting the sack and the pressure. I know the numbers weren't gaudy on the side, and Braylon didn't get the big gaudy numbers of sacks, and neither did Zion. But for me, that group of defensive backs and the way they played and the way they were able to knock it down and start to use the word settle in, and how they did it, great job by this defense. That was the biggest concern, if I had concerns going into the season, was this defense going to be better? I felt they were, and they performed that way.
Yeah, Talkin Green, 5 carries, 31 yards. I think he'll take that anytime against that guy. I thought he was their biggest offensive threat, at least on the ground, Cam, going into the game on Saturday, and to bottle him up like that was pretty impressive. And then you mentioned the secondary. Look, Jabbar Muhammad, number 1, seems to be as advertised. We saw a different number 1 last year in Jordan Perryman. That never materialized, but Jabbar Muhammad seems to be everything that we thought he was going to be as a upperclassman transfer from Oklahoma State. And then how about Devon Banks, man, number 6? Elijah Jackson gets the start, and I thought kind of had a rough day on Saturday, and then number 6 came in, and number 6 to me looks like a guy that may be on the way to being a starter at cornerback. How about your thoughts on Devon Banks?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think Elijah had some opportunities too, and he's getting used to it also. But Devon Banks, if I'm looking at it from the 1,000-foot view, that young man worked his way into a startership role. Now, I don't know what the coaches are going to end up doing. That's why they get paid, and we get to talk about it. But his 4 breakups, his positions that he had, he was right in the hip of guys, his timing with his hands, and Jabbar Muhammad played very well too. I am so excited to see those 2 guys out there and getting sticky, as they were sticky on the wide receivers. That whole defensive back room, and those guys as they rotate, and it's a competitive situation too in that group, but it's hard to argue against Devon Banks not being a starter, and either way, we have time with Tulsa, a chance to be able to see it, because they're going to throw the football too.
Yeah, and you mentioned those edge rushers. Braylon Trice actually had to leave the game at one point, went up the tunnel, came back. ZTF and Braylon kind of quiet on the stat sheet, so we'll come back and talk about if that's a concern or not for you. Cam Cleland, Dave Softy Mahler, Talkin Huskies returns next on Root Sports Northwest. All right, Dog fans, we're back here on Talkin Huskies. Week 1 for UW is in the books with a big, did I mention big, 56-19, 37-point win over Boise State. Michael Penix, whatever, 29 for 40, 450, 5 touchdowns, ho-hum, blah, blah, blah. Another big day for number 9, and the Huskies are rolling offensively into Week 2, Cam, against Tulsa. Don't forget, you want to be a part of the show. We have some great partners in the law offices of Catherine Clark and our friends at Nordstrom Heating and Air. You see the email on your screen there, talkinhuskiesw@gmail.com. contact us if you want to be a part of this journey every week, Talkin Dawgs. And who would not want to be a part of these two faces, Softy and Cam Cleveland, every week Talkin Dawgs right here on Root Sports Northwest. Now, Cam, the one thing you can't do if you're Washington is look past the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, man, coming off a win over Arkansas Pine Bluff on Saturday out of the American. They're making the trek to Husky Stadium this weekend, and all you have to do if you're Kalen DeBoer to prove that anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday is go back and show the boys the scores from last week, including Colorado as a 3-touchdown underdog knocking off TCU.
Yeah, how about Deion Sanders and do you believe? And yeah, I think a lot of us are going to believe that team is good because he can coach. But the entire Pac-12, you can't take any opponent lightly. Tulsa's coming out here. They put up 42 points with their backup quarterback, ran the ball well. Where is Arkansas Pine Bluff? I think it's in Arkansas somewhere. Other than that, that team can play. So they're going to make the trek on out, and they're going to play the greatest setting, and we're going to find out this team never looks past anybody. 1-0, you're working on 2-0. We don't care about Michigan State. Let's not talk about it. One game at a time.
Yeah, and a chance to get some depth, right? We saw that late in the game on Saturday versus Boise State. Dylan Morris hitting backup tight end Josh Cuevas for a touchdown to get that 50-burger on the scoreboard last Saturday. But another opportunity, Cam, to kind of get some more offensive and defensive linemen some play in this game on Saturday. All right, 2 o'clock kickoff Saturday. For Cam Cleveland, producer Alex Altman, my name is Dave Softy Mahler. We'll see you next week right here on Talkin Huskies.